Hi, my name is Mike. I'm one of the co-founders of the company. Brian asked me to give you some details about the company, its strategy, and some of the positions we have. In fact, here's what I think I'll cover. I put together this little presentation for you. So, what is College Power? What's our strategy? What are the available positions, compensation, and then how do you get your questions answered? So let's get started with what is College Power. In fact, I've got a short video to show you. It's about 90 seconds long. Let's move to that.
Imagine having anything you want or need at the very moment you want it for virtually free. That's what can happen when people share the things they're not using. And wouldn't it be cool if there was a website or app that did that? Automatically tracking and taking care of all the details so you don't have to? Now imagine the impact an app like this would have on our world. When we can easily share things when we're not using them, our need to consume natural resources for manufacturing is significantly reduced. And what do you think would happen to poverty and inequality if everyone can access almost anything for virtually free? Okay, so this probably sounds like a utopian future that's many years away, right? Well, here's the thing. A group of technologists and university professors from MIT, Berkeley, Yale, and other top universities have been developing this exact groundbreaking app for years and are now preparing for its global beta launch. And starting now, even before the official launch, you can sign up and start earning by simply using the product. There are many ways to earn, including by simply posting your thoughts and photos. Your earnings start ramping up the very first day. Use some of your profits to access or buy any of millions of things available in the social marketplace, or even cash out some profits. It's a simple idea and has already been awarded many patents from the U.S. Patent Office. Sign up for free and start earning today while helping to make the world a better place.
Okay, so our goals are to help half the world earn a minimum of $25 per day. So this is the same half the world that's currently earning $2 or less per day. And there's a whole bunch of different ways people can earn within the platform. We'll get into that in a moment. And the way we're doing that is by basically making virtually everything that we want or need available to us, delivered to our hands in 30 minutes or less for virtually free, or for doing that which we're all used to doing for free, such as posting and sharing in social media. And so we're trying to go after global poverty and inequality. The second thing that you might have noticed from the video is we are attacking the climate crisis. If most everything we want or need can be delivered to us for very little, then it sort of changes the definition of poverty and inequality, because we can all have access to whatever we need when we need it. And so the other villain we're trying to go after is the climate crisis. So let's take a look at what it takes to deliver this to the population. So the first thing we had to build to make this possible is a social network, much like Facebook. In fact, you'll notice it looks and feels like Facebook, except we've solved many of the problems that Facebook has. For example, there's no echo chambers that are created that are dividing societies. We don't sell advertising. And so we don't get ourselves into a situation where Facebook is, where it has to basically find ways to use our private data to make those ads more effective so they can compete with other platforms like Google. And so we've solved those things within our social network. Now, the next thing we have to do, and we've done, is integrate in a marketplace, much like eBay, except products and services. You can sell things or share them, as the video talked about. So if I've got a camping gear, I can share that and make, however I set the price. And if I need camping gear and I just want to use it for the weekend, maybe instead of spending $500 for a tent and all that, I can press a button, almost like an Uber, if you will. Within 30 minutes, someone brings that equipment to me, and when I'm done, I press a button and it disappears. So all of that happens through the marketplace. It's integrated into the social feed. So to make all that possible, we need a banking system. And so we built that from the ground up, and it includes our own cryptocurrency, which is a secure way to ensure we can do transactions, but we don't have to share a lot of those revenues with with PayPal or the credit card company, so that we can have the revenues belong to the community. And so now you have the makings of an economy, and economies are complicated. They put us through K through 12 and maybe some university and graduate school just to teach us how to become productive members of an economy in all countries around the world. And so we need an educational platform, and we've spent years building that, so that when a new user comes into the system, they're instantly matched with an educator who's there for them to help them become productive members of this economy. And that's provided to all users free of charge, completely paid for by the platform. And so the next thing that happens, now that people are getting educated and they're becoming productive members of this economy, they have a good question, which is all these rules and policies, and who came up with these? And there's hundreds of them that affect people's lives if they're trying to make a living in this platform. And the answer is we did, sitting in our offices here. And we're not part of this system. We're not trying to make a living through it like others would be. And so what that brought up for us is that we need a political system. We need a way to let the community organize themselves and decide what matters and where are their pain points and how do they attack those pain points. And so basically what I'm talking about is we have been flying in some of the top political science minds from the top universities for the last 5 or 6 years. And their objective is basically to answer one question, and that is, what would our founding fathers do today if they were writing a new constitution today, given what you see happening with democracies around the world, including our own, and the advent of technologies and mobile and internet and everything that's going on? How would they do that? And so we're writing a new constitution. And so what we have here is a democratic social network where, as you'll see in a minute, even the president of the company is elected by the users of the platform. So our Zuckerberg, if you will, is not put in by the shareholders, or is not in charge just because he got there first, but our president is constantly refreshed, just like what happens in a country, through popular vote by the users of the platform. To enable that sharing of everything, we need a transportation system for products, kind of like Uber and Lyft. So we've had to build that as well. And so in my example where I'm using the camping gear for the weekend, what if I run off with it or I damage it? How do we resolve that? Especially when you're talking about millions and then hopefully billions of users, how does that get resolved? And so we need a judicial system. We built that from the ground up, all crowd-based, so we don't have to hire thousands or even hundreds of thousands of judges to make this happen. It's all built into the platform, crowd-based. And finally, an app platform that allows third-party developers to come up with their own ideas on things that could plug into all these other elements. And so they can come up with thousands of new ways for users to earn and share things and do everything else that's involved in this platform. And so we built all that. How did we do that? First of all, why has no one else done this? And I got to tell you, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is where social networks are going. Facebook understands that instead of just plopping up ads on there, if they had transactions, they would be the largest economy in the world, bigger than China and the US combined. So why don't they have transactions? They, as you might know, they relaunched the marketplace. But when you meet the guy with the futon, you have to go take care of the transaction yourselves. They don't want any part of that, kind of like Craigslist. Just go do it yourselves. The reason for that is it's incredibly complicated to pull this together. When the number of features in a software project start to go up, the complexity goes up exponentially, as do the costs. And the chances that you can pull it off successfully head to zero pretty fast. And so how is it that we were able to be first? We're the only platform that we're aware of in the world that's been able to pull all of that together and have all of it working seamlessly together. So what is it that we did differently? And so if I had to summarize that into one word, it would probably be failure. We have, for everything that I've showed off to you and boasted about, we've probably failed 5, 6, 7 times. Some of those failures were quick. New feature went live and we could see it's just not going to work. Or others went live and we just kept trying and trying and trying. It took 3, 4, 5 years until we gave up. And so we were just not afraid to fail. And every time we failed, we'd pick ourselves back up and keep going again. And so another way of saying that is innovation. we've innovated a lot. And if you want some evidence of that, you just go to google.com/patents. That's that's Google's patent search tool, and type in my last name, which is Pousti. If you type that in, what you'll see is that we have invented a lot of what most of us are used to using today on the internet. Examples of that are, first of all, applications in social networks. So Twitter apps, Facebook apps, where a third party can add an application to a platform like that. We own the patent on that. You'll see that if you go to that link and type in my last name. The concept of virtual currency is one of our inventions. Any kind of transactions within apps. So, Farmville or the game where you buy a weapon and there's a transaction within an app, we own the patent on that. We invented that. Any kind of transaction over a mobile device, right, is another one of our patents. In fact, if you search again on that, my last name, you'll see a ton of our patents pop up, but you'll also see patents pop up that belong to Google, Microsoft, Cisco, eBay, you name the tech company, they'll pop up too. And so you'll say, why do their patents pop up when you search my name? The reason is our patent portfolio at this point is so broad that when any of these companies want to file new patents, they often have to very quickly in their filing tell the patent office that, listen, we know you're going to run into their patents and here's why ours are different, and don't just reject our filing. And so I'm being named now in all of their patent filings because they know that we got there first. And so that just kind of gives you a sense of how broad our inventions are. And so that's how we did this. We just got busy failing and inventing, and very quietly, unbeknownst to anyone, built all this stuff. So people that have learned about our story often say this is the most successful startup that no one's ever heard of because we've kept it very, very quiet. We have spent only $250 million building this platform. And I say only, a company like, say, Facebook, they raised over $1 billion before they became profitable and didn't need to raise more money. And so it's actually a small amount of money to have spent building all of that. And here's the best part. We did that completely from revenues without taking a single penny from venture capitalists or Wall Street or any kind of profit-seeking investor. And so I think this is a kind of an important point I need to make here. So if you don't mind, I'll spend a minute explaining why we did that, because it was hard. For the first so many years, we had no payroll. We were a bunch of guys working out of a condo. We had 35 desks all over this condo, no rent, no payroll. And we're trying to see if we could do this without raising a single penny in revenues. And so let me sort of explain why. So something kind of crazy is happening in society today, namely inequality. On these graphs, you'll see the U.S. is that blue line on top there. Some of the other English-speaking countries share the same pattern where inequality has been dropping all century for the last century. And what this line shows is the percent of total income that's owned by the top 1%. And so the share of income that the top 1% has been dropping last century. And then all of a sudden in the 80s and 90s, it turns around and starts going sky high. So what's going on? Why is that happening? Why are we starting to have these haves and have-nots? And by the way, looking at some other countries as well, you can see that this is a pattern that's happening around the world. In fact, there was an article recently on CNN, it was on every media, that said the top 26 richest people in the world now have as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity. Think about that for a second. 26 people have as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity. That's a scary thought. And what it means is that we're starting to have the haves and have-nots. And so how does this tie back to what I was just talking about and why we didn't take money from investors? So let me use Uber as an example. So as you know, Uber and Lyft are monopolizing the taxi business worldwide, right? Think about that. Just a few years ago, the taxi business worldwide were owned by a mom and pop, a guy or gal that owns one taxi, or maybe they own 5 or 10 taxis or medallions, but for the most part, highly decentralized. Now, you've got this thing happening called the network effect, where on Uber, the more passengers that download Uber, the more drivers want to go there because that's where they'll make money fast. And the more drivers that are on Uber, the more passengers want to use Uber because that's where they'll get a ride fast. And so you can see that one or two companies are pretty much monopolizing the entire global taxi business, and just to use that one vertical. And so what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that you end up with one or two billionaires at the top of these companies, few founders, some investors, hundreds or maybe a few thousand employees that are doing well, tech workers. And then everyone else, all the other people making money are the drivers, of course, right? In that example. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that these companies are all Wall Street funded. As you know, Wall Street wants more and more profits every quarter. When you deliver profits to them, the next quarter they want more profits. And that's the management's job, is to deliver that. Now, all companies' revenues at some point start to plateau, right? They saturate the market and eventually there's no one left to buy their product. So their revenues start to slow down. The growth rate starts to slow down. When that happens, there's only one other thing these companies can do to keep that profit line moving to where Wall Street wants it to be. And of course, that is cut costs, right? Profit equals revenues minus costs. So they can cut costs. So what's the number one cost of Uber and Lyft? Well, of course, it's the money it pays the drivers. And so at that point, when those revenues start to slow down, to keep the profit line going and keep Wall Street happy, they have to start finding clever ways to start squeezing the drivers, to not pay them as much, right? Because the minute they miss those numbers that the analysts have, down goes the stock, bad things start to happen. Employees' options are underwater. They start leaving. The board replaces the CEO, who brings in a new management team who says, listen, we can do this. We can get those profits back up, and away they go again, right? So they can't let that happen. So when the revenues start to plateau, they start squeezing the drivers, and they start doing it in ways that are kind of clever, algorithmic, so the driver doesn't really understand how much they're making, that they're making a little bit less. If they're too obvious about how they're starting to pay them less, then those drivers might leave, right? To go to the other company. And so the other company, of course, is doing the same thing. Both these companies want to be public companies. One of them's already public. The other one's about to go public. Okay, so what's the problem with that? The problem is, as they start to squeeze these drivers, little by little by little, these drivers who have leases now, they've leased these cars, they've got costs, they've got family, they're starting to become economic slaves to the machine. They can't leave because, first of all, they have nowhere else to go. There's just two of them that have monopolized the entire space. But they also have the cost of the vehicle that they're leasing, et cetera. And so they just have to work more hours, and they just have to find more ways to make ends meet. And so that was just an example of what happens with the network effect, right? Where the passengers bring the drivers bring the passengers. So now multiply that by 100 or thousands of other verticals. That was just the taxi business. Multiply that by the rest of those, and the same thing starts to happen there. This is called the network effect. And so what I'm trying to say is, the network effect, when you add in top of that the fact that these apps and these companies are all funded by Silicon Valley VCs who want the company to go public, so now they're Wall Street companies, and they demand quarterly growth. When you add those two together, you basically have economic slavery for much of humanity that are starting to work in this on-demand, gig economy, right? And so, first of all, I should tell you, this is why we didn't take money from Wall Street and from any investors, because we don't want to be in a situation where all these people that are making money within our platform, where we ever have to start listening to Wall Street and trying to figure out how to extract more and more and more profits just to keep them happy. Our goal with this platform was, if we could figure out a way to build this thing without taking investor capital, if we were to get so lucky, we could be in a position where we could help people improve their lives without being in a position where we have to basically start extracting out. So just to prove to you I'm not making this stuff up as I go, I wrote this book on this concept. It was in 2014. So this was before Donald Trump and all the populist movements that are happening all over Europe and Brazil, all over the place, Brexit. What's happening there is people are getting squeezed and they're proposing crazy solutions, right? Some of the solutions being proposed are bring down the democratic system. Many of the people that voted for our current president have said that. They said they wanted someone to shake things up. They wanted someone to bring down the system because they're feeling fear. They're feeling economic uncertainty. And my submission for your consideration that this is happening because of the network effect and the inequality line that you saw. So some of the solutions being proposed bring down the system. First of all, let me just point out how ludicrous this is. In the last century, humanity gave up hundreds of millions of lives in our 2 world wars to fight communism and fascism and make this democratic way of life we have possible. To even suggest that we should somehow bring that down is just being naive about what the cost was to have this democratic system. Other proposals are to change it so dramatically such that it's hardly recognizable. You have a bunch of people lining up now to be presidential candidates for 2020. And some of the ideas they have, tax the rich 70, 80, 90%, not just on their income, but on their wealth. I mean, these are such dramatic changes that the system would hardly be recognizable, right? So there's one more solution. What if someone, some company, somewhere, some group of people were able to somehow launch a platform that also exploits the network effect, right? Also puts themselves in a position where as they get more, say, drivers and passengers, those feed each other to where no one can compete with them. But, and in the process, providing millions of opportunities for people to earn, just like they can on Uber and many other apps like Airbnb and virtually all other verticals that are being appified. However, somehow remains free from the grip of Wall Street. And so that's why we did all this without taking a penny from investors. And I'll be honest with you, it was hard. It was hard work. Years and years of no payroll or low payroll to get to this point. And we're lucky. We're finally in a position where we're still alive and we've been able to pull all this together. And I got to tell you, when your back's against the wall, it really helps put you in a position where you're ready to innovate because you don't have a choice, right? It's fight or flight. Flight means quit and give up and say that was stupid. It's not going to work. I mean, trying to build something like this without capital, not going to work. Or you can fight. And fighting means innovating. It means finding a way. We don't have enough developers. Well, what if we created this platform for third-party developers to put stuff in there and they could earn too? And right, there's a tremendous amount of complexity in there, but we had no choice. And so we innovated and we got there. And so that's why we didn't take any money. And so now let's talk about, now that the platform is, and by the way, we're in alpha mode. We've been testing it with thousands of users and we're getting ready to go into beta. Beta is going to happen on August 5th of this year. And so let's talk about our strategy. How are we going to get out there and win? So our strategy is to, first of all, take a page out of Facebook's book. Where did they start? They started in the college market, right? So first thing we want to do is go after college students, bring them into the platform. Why college students? They are, first of all, early adopters. They're able to try new things first because they don't have as many preset habits as people that are older. They still care about things like we've been talking about, like global poverty and inequality or the climate crisis, enough to put effort into something. They're still at a point where they're idealistic, like we are here, and wanting to make a change in the world. And then once we bring those students into the platform, bring the local merchants around the colleges into the platform so they can provide their goods and services, and then bring the non-student consumers into the platform. And if you take a look at any city, San Diego here where we're at, look at those universities. They're spread out all over town. It's the same thing in LA or European cities or Asia. So they make great beachheads, to use a military term, from where we can bring in students, go after the local merchants, and then with the local merchants, bring in everyone else into the platform. And so that's the way we want to go. We've named the product, as you know, College Power. To just summarize why, and we'll talk about what's in it for college students, but the thing we want to do is we want to empower our students. We want to make it so that when they go to school, they know that when they join College Power, we're going to be helping them to get the power that they need to get a lot of the things done that they need to get done, as you'll see in a second. So what's in it for them? First thing I should tell you, of course, is last thing students need is yet another social media platform, right? They've got, of course, Facebook, which they hardly use anymore because they use Snapchat and Instagram and a bunch of other platforms. So that's not going to work, just giving them yet another social media platform. So what is it that students would want that they're not getting from another social media platform? And that is help them earn, right? None of those platforms really help them make money. for doing that which they're already doing all day long, which is posting and sharing, right? And so we can do that. We've spent years quietly testing that. It's incredibly complicated to pay people for posting and sharing. One of the reasons it's so complicated is because of fraud. It's so easy to get an account and then either use a bot to do posting and sharing, or get a sweatshop of people just creating a bunch of fake accounts to take all the earnings for yourself. So unless you can fight that fraud, you cannot do this. This is not an easy thing to do. And then if you want the earnings to be meaningful, you're going to have to figure out how to make the whole economy work so that you have enough money to pay people for things like posting and sharing that don't generate revenue for the company. And so it's taken us many years of trial and error to get that right. And so students can earn just by doing that which they're already doing, which the one thing that they're all doing is posting and sharing in social media. They can earn remotely and on their own schedule. So this is a big thing for college students, right? Because their schedules are constantly changing every quarter or semester. And, and being in they don't always have cars, they live on campus. And so being able to earn remotely and on their own schedule is a major, major plus. And that's what I'm talking about, empowering students. Once they can make money doing that which they're already doing remotely and on their own schedules, well, you've empowered them. Now they can spend more time on their studies or on having meaningful collegiate experiences that they want to have that they're not having when they're working 20 to 40 hours as a busboy or doing some other menial job where people talk down to them because they don't have any experience, and it's just really robbing them of the time and resources they need to be able to really do well in school and walk out of school a better citizen, right? No limit to their earnings. They can earn a lot of money if they're willing to work hard, but for the most part, because they'll be part-time, they'll earn maybe between $500 and $1,500 a month. Let's talk about some of the ways they earn. I mentioned posting and sharing. They can make between $25 and $100 a day with just about an hour of posting and sharing. They can be an activist on campus, sign up other students and make $20 every time a student signs up. They can trade our currency. So as I mentioned earlier, we have cryptocurrency in there. So if they're trading currency, they can earn bonuses between 1% and 7%. They can be a transporter, as we mentioned, like an Uber driver, taking products back and forth between people, not humans, but products for the sharing of everything, or what we call everything fast and free. They can sell products or services. They set the price. They earn 85%. So the platform takes 15%. And that's how we make money, by the way. That's the main revenue source that we can bring in. And then that's how we pay, for example, for posting and sharing, is from those earnings that we get from people selling things. They can also share products. So in the example, I use the camping gear, right? They can, instead of selling a tent for $300 or $500, they can rent it out or share it for $10, $15 a day, and it ends up being a lot more revenue over time. So it's a good way to earn. And they can be a guide to other students, so an educator. So when new students come in, I mentioned we give them an educator, someone that's more knowledgeable than they are, that can help answer their questions and help bring them along and help them become productive in the economy. And they earn when their students earn. So if I have a guide, every time I cash out, say, $100, they'll get anywhere between 3 to 18% at no cost to me. So the platform pays that, and there's a bunch of different bonuses they can make as well. Let me talk about some of the key rules within the platform so you can see how it works. So economy is generated using this concept of maturation. So by that I mean when people earn, they have to wait 90 days before they can cash out those earnings. Does that make sense? So in the meantime, they can spend those earnings, some or all of them, in the economy before they can cash it out. So why that's important is because if I've earned a bunch of money, but I can't cash it out yet, but then I see right on the platform that someone's selling their used iPhone and I wanted to buy an iPhone anyway, or the camping gear, or what have you, with one click, I can spend that money. And so what it creates is a situation where virtually every single user of the platform has money burning a hole in their pockets where they can't cash it out yet, but they can spend with one click. So on the flip side of that, anyone who has something to sell or share feels like a superstar, because as soon as they try to sell anything or share anything, they've got just unlimited people wanting to buy. So all of a sudden, selling and sharing becomes super easy. Look, in any economy or marketplace, you have this chicken or egg problem. Until you get enough sellers willing to sell stuff, you're not going to get buyers there. But until you have enough buyers ready to spend, you're not going to get sellers there. So how do you break that chicken or egg problem? Well, this is how we break it. By paying people for posting and sharing and other ways to earn, and then they have this money ready to spend that they can't cash out yet, the sellers will come. And that's how we get economy going. Why has no one else done this? Very, very difficult to do technically. Specifically, that maturation process. Listen, if you're tracking every penny as it goes through the economy and to make sure it, to watch how mature it is, well, if the cost of doing that technically to every penny is more than a penny, the process is broken, right? You can't have the process of watching the money cost more than the money itself. And so how to do that securely and cost effectively is very complicated. It took us years to get it right. And now we've had it working for a few years where we can do that. And so we can build economy in that way. Now, not everyone can wait 90 days to cash out. And so there's also a bunch of ways to cash out fast. It's called a cash advance. It's not like a bank where we're loaning them money. It's just money they've already earned. A cash advance means they accelerate it out so they don't have to wait 90 days and can get cash fast, so they can do things like pay the rent. And students earn in our own cryptocurrency, which allows us to keep the cost of the transactions very low. But then the minute they want to cash out, they hit a button and it converts it. It's in dollars in the platform. When they want to cash out, it gives them the cryptocurrency equivalent, which they can go to a currency exchange and convert and ultimately get their US dollars or their favorite local currency. So while the money's in the system, it's not in cryptocurrency. So that way it's not volatile. It doesn't, if the cost, the price of the cryptocurrency goes up or down, and I sold my iPhone for X dollars, I don't have to worry about the price of that going up and down because it stays in my local currency while it's inside the platform. And so that's sort of how the economy works. What does this word alpha mean? I promise I'm about to wrap up in just 2 minutes. What does the word alpha mean? It means that this is it's complicated. We're not at beta yet. Beta launch is this August, right? So the platform, it's an economy. Economies can be complicated. So you're the pioneer. Along with us, let's work to improve and simplify it. We're hiring engineers rapidly to take your ideas and bugs that you find or issues that you find and work on those and fix them. And so as we move from alpha to beta over these next few months, together we'll learn what works, what doesn't work, what's confusing, and we'll work together to improve those things so that we're in much better shape for our beta launch. And in the process, let's not forget about this, that we've been talking about money and shares and all that and positions for so long, that I don't want us to lose this next point, which is in the process, we'll take a massive bite out of global poverty and inequality, right? Half the world today, 3.8 billion people, live on $2 or less per day. The only reason that's happening to them and not to you and I is because they live in places where there's no strong economy. You and I don't live on that because we're in an economy where a lot of money is changing hands. By us delivering to them over the wire and wireless, right, an economy that they can immediately become a part of, someone will handhold them to become productive members of an economy, all of a sudden they're members of an economy. And so our goal is to bring them up to a minimum of $25 per day, that 3.8 billion people. Think about that. When someone's making $2 or less per day and you bring them up to $25, in other words, you take their income level up by 12x, think about what that means to their life. It's a complete game changer, right? Not to mention the sharing of everything where they don't even have to buy most of the things that they want and need, right? This is a concept that we're all starting to just get used to. Here in San Diego, we have these scooters and bikes all over the place. And I don't have to own a bike or a scooter. I just go, use my phone and I get it and I ride home for $1. Imagine that applied to everything through the logistics and software that we've created. It changes the definition of poverty and inequality. And in the process, we're also taking a bite out of the climate crisis. All that stuff doesn't need to be created for everybody, whether it's sitting in their closet or their cupboard or their garage. And even help save democracies around the world. Listen, I don't know if there's another product or company or out there where you can make this kind of a difference on a planetary scale. But again, think about what's happening to democracies around the world, and it's not getting better. You saw that inequality line. While that inequality line keeps going up like that, people will be rising up everywhere. Look at what's happening in France right now. Google it if you don't know. Look at what's happening everywhere. People are getting upset because technology is creating, because of the network effect, is creating the haves and the have-nots. And at some point in a democracy, especially, people will rise up and break the system, and we're going to go back a century. What's needed is a platform that can provide earning opportunities without Wall Street forcing it to extract profits out more and more and more for the benefit of a few percent of the elite, right? And I am not aware of another platform anywhere in the world that's been able to build all this, first of all, whether or not they took money from investors, and secondly, certainly not anyone that's been able to pull this off together without taking a penny from investors, right? We're in a position right now that hopefully with your help, we can make something big happen in all three of those. And so please don't forget about that. That's why we're here. We didn't build this just for all of us to make some money and stock prices to go. If we wanted to do that, we would have taken money from investors a long time ago. Please keep that in mind when you're going through this platform and you're learning about things. It's okay to like the income. You have costs, you have rent, you have hopes and dreams, and you want your family to do well. That makes sense, right? But don't forget that we're here for a much bigger reason than that. So let's see if we can do both. Any questions? We are putting together a frequently asked questions right at start.collegepower.com. Go right there. And if you have more questions, if you don't see your question answered, write to us. I know you were in touch with Brian. Write to him, and we'll get your questions answered. And I hope to be able to interact with you in person soon and be on the same team very soon. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.